Hello and welcome to the 5 Minute Film Club. And in anticipation of David Fincher's Mank about the writer of Citizen Kane, Herman J. Mankiewicz, I thought there's no better time than to head back and watch the film that really is the Citizen Kane of cinema. And that's Citizen Kane. Released in America in 1941, Citizen Kane was the first feature film of a young 25-year-old Orson Welles, who at the time was a Broadway and radio success, following his Mercury Theatre Company productions, and gained notoriety in 1938 by tricking many into believing that aliens were indeed invading America with his broadcast of The War of the Worlds. He was courted by Hollywood until he eventually signed a contract with RKO, and a contract that had rarely been seen since a silent era. He was given complete creative freedom to come up with an original story of his own, cast and crew the film himself, and also have final cut privilege. The story of Citizen Kane is a tricky one to try and explain to people who haven't actually watched it. Really, what plays out is the least interesting thing to me about it. It's based on various American tycoons of the day, but particularly William Randolph Hearst, who was the Rupert Murdoch of his day and hated this film's very existence. After one of the most celebrated openings in cinematic history with the often quoted Rosebud, we get the News on the March sequence that satirises the cinema-going experience of the day. In it, we get the whole story of the film told to us, announcing the death of our main character, Charles Foster Kane, played by Orson Welles. This is a great device as the narrative structure for the film is told through various character points of view and in flashbacks, as the newsreel reporter tries to discover the meaning behind Kane's last words of Rosebud. When it was first released, all publicity for the film was blacklisted by Hearst's media properties. It struggled to gain an audience because of that, but it won over many of the critics who sat and watched the film in its first release. It wasn't released outside of America really until after the Second World War. I love the News on the March sequence. They took so much effort to make it look real. It's a prank again, essentially. It's the same thing as the War of the Worlds, but it's so necessary and it doesn't feel like somebody sitting down and telling you the story, in a patronising way. Aside from how the story is constructed, the film is revolutionary in many other areas. From the way the film is actually lit, a harmonious collaboration between cinematographer Greg Toland, the subtle aging makeup provided by Morris Siderman that goes a long way to selling the reality of the film. Like I said in my review of The Wizard of Oz, the amount of work and innovation that went into the making of that film and Citizen Kane is just unseen by the audience, as it just works so well. You only notice how great it is when you start to sit and think about it. Orson Welles has great economy when it comes to the lengths of the shots that he uses. A lot of it comes from being inexperienced as well. He was someone with a radio and theatre background and approached the film in that same vein. The first reporter scene after the News on the March sequence, we don't actually get to see any of the faces clearly, but he used his knowledge of radio theatre in understanding that you don't need to see people's faces for what they're saying to make sense to an audience. And so he can create this visually stunning shot without being tied to any rules about needing to show people speaking. My favourite scene of the whole film is where you get Charles Foster Kane and he's playing with his sled outside and the camera tracks back in through a window and into the house. And then we get the whole sequence playing out in one long take, with everything in pin-sharp focus. Welles was forever berating the lenses on a camera, saying, "I just want it to look like it does in real life." As I said with Wizard of Oz, it's very difficult for me to add anything new to the discussion about Citizen Kane, other than to say don't be put off by the moniker that this film gets. Citizen Kane, it's such a big thing in film. Ever since 1952, it has been in Sight and Sound's top 10 films of all time, and it's only just been knocked off the top spot by Vertigo. It's still number 2, but of the greatest film ever made. That is quite a thing to attach to a film. And, Orson Welles went on to make loads of other films that are, equally as good in some respects. I think the reason for Citizen Kane's status, though, is that if you start to look at how films changed after its release, you see that People really did watch this film, filmmakers watched this film, and saw, yes, I don't have to do it the way I thought I had to. I can be a bit more experimental. So even watching the film now, there are still things in it that take your breath away if you like films. And for me, that is the length of the shots and the pin-sharp focus that you get in all of the shots, and the fact that the makeup doesn't feel artificial. It is still a wonderful experience watching Citizen Kane today. So all I will just say is thank you very much for watching my review, and let me know your first instance of watching Citizen Kane and what you thought about it. Did you like it, or can you not see what all the fuss is about? Next week, I'm continuing my series looking at The Godfather with The Godfather Part 3, just before I review the new cut of the film, which is called Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. Catchy little title, that. Thank you very much for watching this review, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!